mean, they have relationship issues. That's the funniest thing, right? You have a male gorilla and a female gorilla, and they fight, or they have issues, or if someone hits, if one of the blackback male gorillas hits on a silverback's girlfriend, he's going to get bitten, you know. And then you have the babies who are just playing around like they would as human beings. Hi, my name is David Gonahasa, and I'm the team lead at the Naturalist that's running the Home of the Gorillas project in Buindi, Uganda. Yeah, so Home of the Gorillas is a project that was started to try to find new ways to fund mountain gorilla conservation. There's so many things that led to this project, but the most important one was the fact that there's only 1,063 gorillas left in the wild. I'm sure this number has grown since we last got the statistic, but the challenge is that if there's no efforts towards conservation, we could lose the entire species. And I must say that governments and communities are doing a lot of work to try to support conservation. On one part, you have mountain gorilla trekking, but there's another thing about trekking is that the only way you scale trekking is by letting more people into the forest. So you have to increase either more permits sold or how many people go into the forest, which has its negative effects because it's more pressure on the forest, it's more human-animal interaction, which does have its challenges. The other way is donor funding, but the challenge with donor funding as well is that donor funding can be very specific towards activities that are in line with the donor's mandate. The ability to create new revenue streams without actually having people go to the forest will be very exciting, and technology gives you a chance to do this. And that's what we're trying to do with the My Gorilla Family project. I lead a team of about 5 people who have been working on this for about 6 years. We've been lucky enough to get an exclusive contract from the government of Uganda that we work with quite closely to be able to build a virtual way for people to interact with the mountain gorillas.
Amazing. Because I was reading through the website, and we've talked before, but the app really functions kind of in 3 ways. It's alternative revenues, global awareness, and engaging the surrounding community. And I'd love to kind of break down each one. How do you see sort of the alternative revenue model working as a way to support the gorilla families in Uganda and East Africa?
Yeah, so we built that model based on one particular insight, and that's the fact that mountain gorillas live in families in the forest, and human beings live on their mobile phones. So what we've basically done is try to get the mountain gorillas onto your mobile phone. How we do it is through a subscription-based application. So you'll pay $2 a month, and with this, for these $2, you're able to go in there. You have access to this application that has daily feed on the gorillas. So to get that, we have cameras in the forest, which capture daily feed from different families. This footage comes we move it into the city, we do some editing, and you get short videos. So it's a keen sort of like an Instagram for gorillas, which would be really cool. It's very specific. You're able to see, daily video. You can follow a particular family, see daily videos, see updates on the activity, baths, when they move from one place to the other, when they create a new nest or a new home. And it's just understanding exactly what this speech is about. We find that our target audiences, or human beings in general, we attach or associate to things that we can get, a lot of information from, right? So if I have more information about how these gorillas live, I'll probably take more interest. But we also have a fun part to it. So as opposed to only the Nat Geo type videos or documenting of the activity, we're going a step further to also add a bit of sort of comedy to these videos, right? So we may voice a few gorillas discussing the Premier League or something like that. That should be pretty interesting if we can pull it off. So that's the idea. But the app is not only about the feeds, right? So we're looking at adding a bit of gamification in there. For example, if you walk 1 kilometer, you can unlock, videos of the day. We're just thinking through this whole process to see how much value can we give a subscriber. So in addition to the responsible thing that you're doing in supporting mountain gorillas, we're also giving you an application that gives you value and is actually fun to have on your mobile phone. That's the idea.
Awesome. So I know you mentioned the audience could potentially be every human being. It's quite a bit. But as far as raising awareness for the mountain gorillas, where do you find that people, where are they at, generally speaking? Do they understand that there's a difference between kind of mountain gorillas and gorillas, the rareness of the East African mountain gorilla? How much kind of basic education do you need to do versus kind of a more advanced like connection with the gorillas?
That's a very good question because unfortunately for some of the other gorillas, the mountain gorilla seems to be the superstar of the gorillas, if I would use that. But that's also because it's the most endangered, or one of the most endangered, because I've heard about another lowland gorilla that's actually critically endangered currently. But the mountain gorillas, the difference with mountain gorillas is that they cannot live anywhere else outside of the mountains or the hills, the highlands in the Virunga, the Great Virunga area. So that's in Bwindi in Uganda and Kahinga in Rwanda and the Congo. So they can't live anywhere else. While some of the other lowland gorillas may, for example, be in a zoo somewhere in the US. So it is a great thing for us to be able to create more visibility for the other gorilla species. And I think for us as well, we are starting with the mountain gorillas. Hopefully we can start to add some of the other gorillas in other parts of Africa. But again, we're limited by where we can start and then eventually see how we can scale it up. But I think just on one part, taking interest, I think if you remember the story of the white rhino, I think it's now extinct, the very last white rhino that died a couple of maybe years ago. If because of how much visibility that story got, people began to actually understand what the white rhinos are. And in the same light is how can we create more visibility about the gorillas, and that we're driving interest. Conservation starts with interest, right? If I don't care about something, I'm not going to think about how do I save it. So can we give the world enough information, and then based on that to have get involved somehow, and that somehow could be $2 a month that allows you to actually just follow a particular family. I want to say something about the gorillas themselves because I've been trekking a couple of times, and when you walk up this mountain, first of all, it's a very tedious, job actually walking up the hill, right? When you get up there and you start to watch these animals, interact and live, they are very close to human beings because they have relationship issues. That's the funniest thing, right? You have a male gorilla and a female gorilla, and they fight, or they have issues. Or if one of the blackback male gorillas hits on a silverback's girlfriend, he's going to get bitten. And then you have the babies who are just playing around like they would as human beings. There was a story of a mother gorilla, and I saw this as well. She had a baby, and it was a stillbirth, but she held on to her little dead baby gorilla for about 3 days. And she was very sad, and you could see the whole family going to mourning. And then maybe a year later, she gets pregnant, and you can see she's very happy. And apparently, she goes back to the place where they buried the little baby gorilla. So it's very interesting. Just that they can't speak, but they have a way they communicate. You'll sit there and hear the silverback make a sound, and when the silverback makes a sound, they all get up and move. It's not like other animals where it's just they're very coordinated, they're very human-like, and that's why I think it's been more important for us to save this species.
Got it. And often in these conversations with conservation of a species, it's also a conversation about the communities that live in the same area as the species, that balance. I understand that one of your co-founders has kind of a direct tie to that. How are you working to engage the surrounding communities, and how will the app and the company further that development?
One of the most forgotten things with many conservation activities is the community that lives around national parks. And it's very unfortunate, especially in Africa, where you have lots of nature-based tourism, and it's tourists coming in from the west, and you get to the national parks, and everyone who lives around the park is very poor, and people are in there paying $1,000 a night for a property or for a lodge to be able to stay. And it's no different in the Bwindi area, or where we're trying to do this project. You find that the communities around the park live in extreme poverty. We're trying to go with a One Health approach. We think that whatever it is that we're doing should actually be able to fund both gorilla conservation, but also fund community activity around the forest. And how this works is simple. 20% of whatever monies coming to this project are directed at community activity. And this means that the community is deciding where to spend this money. We're not sitting up in the sky somewhere and saying that we think you should do this and do that. No, they identify the problems that they have as a group that sits together. And these problems may be, for example, one, healthcare or clean water and sanitation, or it could be agriculture projects, but they decide what they want to do, and allocations are made as investment in those community projects. I should also add that if you don't support the community as you push or build conservation efforts, they will cancel a lot of what you're doing, because the forest, and I've said this many times before, the forest used to be these people's home. They used to go into the forest to get food, firewood. They would go into the forest to worship their native gods, if you want to call it that. They lived in those forests. And then one day, the government came and said, because these gorillas are very important, you need to leave the forest. And it's a great effort that was done. Unless you have a way to help these people maintain their livelihoods, it's very counterproductive. So that's our approach. We are very deliberate about how we approach this. So it's on one part, yes, the gorillas. Secondly, is the people, the communities around the gorillas, and the third is the forest itself and how we can support that as a whole ecosystem.
Got it. And another element that I believe that you're developing that we've discussed some is potential for an NFT, or to use some kind of Web3 technologies to could further push the idea of connecting tourists or travelers or conservationists with these gorillas. In theory, things could change. How do you see that working, playing out?
Yeah, so it's very early days on the NFT, but we find that one of the most exciting things about this whole project. Now, there have been a number of conservation NFTs. I think there was one about some endangered species in the seas, and this, some elephant activity and things. What we're trying to do is, I think one of the first conservation NFT that's actually linked to a specific gorilla family, and it goes back to our insight about the family structure of these gorillas. So we want to do a interesting two-level NFT, okay, and see what kind of utility we can build around those NFTs. So on one part, you have what we're calling the silverback NFT. So again, a lot of this is still very theoretical, but we're starting the building process and figuring out which blockchain to build it on and all this. So you'd have a silverback NFT, which basically is linked to an actual gorilla, right? And to make sure we confirm that, in addition to you getting the art of that gorilla and all these basics, you also get naming rights. So you can decide to call, there's a gorilla that I know that's called Mark. I wonder why it's called Mark, but it's called Mark. And one of the biggest gorillas in Uganda, actually, it's a silverback male. So you can decide to call, as part of the NFT, you get, Mark's art, you get adoption rights of Mark. So you can actually say, you've adopted Mark with a certificate from the Wild Authority. You will also get naming rights. Okay, so you can give a second name if it's not been named before. So that gorilla can be called Mark Jeffries. And if there's any reporting being done about that, it's actually going to be called just that. You also will get a trekking permit to come and see the gorilla that the NFT you're buying, so you can actually get to get to see it. And that's the first level of the NFT. But because of the limited nature of the number of NFTs out there and the fact that we need to have more community involvement, we will then also issue a second or secondary NFT that's linked to the primary. And this is a bunch of collectibles that are built around the silverback. So it's still Max NFT, but Max art, but it's just purely art, and you can actually show that you are supporting conservation. The best part, the most interesting part of this as well, is that we're thinking that since NFTs are an investment, anybody who buys the silverback NFT will actually earn some money of the sale or the resale of all the collectibles. And that's how we're thinking about this, and we're hoping that we can actually launch this hopefully by the we're in the fourth quarter or the first quarter of 2023. And that's the idea that we're doing.
Amazing. So I guess, how do you see that kind of working with Gorilla Family as far as the subscriptions, the NFT, and to fully kind of support conservation, to bring better balance to the mountain gorillas?
Conservation is heavily about funding. Okay, we're successful at what we're trying to do. We're able to push millions of dollars into conservation efforts, right? So that's from gorilla doctors or doctor activity. We actually work with a group called CTPH, or Conservation Through Public Health, who actively monitor gorilla health activity. They're in the forest every other day. And that's one of the things that we want to be able to support. We already have an agreement with them. We're looking at Part of this money goes to fund government efforts towards conservation. This covers the rangers who are in the forest, managing communication with the communities, a lot of protection what the government is doing, and then also, of course, the community activity that I mentioned before, where we get the community to build more lively projects. As a whole, more money coming into the conservation efforts of the mountain gorilla mean that you can just do more to make sure it's safer, that the species actually lives longer, and that's really how we see all these things coming together. Like I say, between we've launched the subscription-based applications, a couple of changes that we need to make based on feedback that we have, and we believe that we'll also have the NFT, but also do an annual festival, because we believe that the NFT and the applications are virtual ways to interact. Can we create a physical way to interact? Can we actually get people who are part of different families come together and just celebrate conservation right close to where the gorillas are? So the idea is this would be an annual mountain gorilla festival. We would like to get some of the biggest artists from all over the world to come in and just, again, I say this, the starting point is let's create visibility, let's create interest. And if we can create interest, we can create funding channels for mountain gorilla conservation.
Terrific. So how can people get involved to support the development from Home of the Gorillas and Gorilla Family to finding out more news about the NFT as it comes to fruition?
So our website is gorilla.family. I think it's one of the coolest domains I think out there.
Yeah.
So it's just gorilla.family, and you can get on there, learn more about what we're doing. We shall be releasing the NFT website soon as well. Of course, subscribe to the application. That's something that is something that we're a couple of things being fixed right now. But yes, subscribing to the application, being able to get more information on the gorillas, join different families. Right now, if you get into the app, you're able to see the different families that you can join and be a part of. And as we build more and more on this in terms of the volume of content we can put out, in terms of the amount of video content we can put out. I think help us make gorillas famous, and if we can, probably we'll be able to save them.
Anything else that you'd want to add for people and things like the gorillas, or you traveling Uganda, conservation?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think everyone should come to Uganda. It's a beautiful place to come to. I mean, Alex, you've been here a couple of times, so I believe you know what it looks like. But going gorilla trekking is one of those once in a lifetime experiences. I am Ugandan, and I've been close to forest many times. I've never been trekking until maybe 3 years ago. Now I've done it 4 times, and I want to go back as often as possible. And what's very interesting as well is when you see a gorilla family the first time, you really, there's an attachment it creates. It's like, wow, I'm seeing this baby gorilla. I want to go back after a couple of years and see it again. And like what you see in the zoo, because yes, you may see gorillas in the zoo, but then when you go on this experience, you're standing next to this animal, and it's just shocking how big they are and how it's. I'm lost for words to actually explain the experience, but it's something everyone should try to do. I know it's super expensive to go trekking, but if you can't go there physically, at least you can do it virtually and make that connection, and hopefully at some point be able to see it. Yeah, I think pretty much for me that's it. Ask everyone to check us out, visit our app, follow what we're doing with our project. When we launch the NFT, and I think it will be a phased approach. We won't mint all the NFTs at once. We'll probably mint one silverback NFT maybe every couple of weeks, and just keep pushing that over time. And we truly hope that the efforts that we're trying to put in place will create a fair amount of change for gorilla conservation.